Stop it. Okay, looks like it's all recording. Check, check. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. You can also see my ugly mug too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't normally put myself on camera. This is going to be the only time, just because it's the first time and it's an introduction. So, hi everybody, this is me. I'm wondering if there's anybody who knows what this means. No fans? Nobody's gonna. All right, just want to check. Okay. The first time somebody responds properly to this t-shirt, I'm gonna be so happy. All right, let's see. Let me get the chat up just in case there's anybody who can't talk. Okay, quick introduction, just so you know what kind of a weird person you're dealing with. So, right, I've got this is my obsession. A big Batman fan. So that's enough of that. Let's get on with the material for this week. Thank you for everybody for showing up. First of all, there's 15 of you, which is fantastic. That's about half. And thank you to everybody who filled out the doodle poll. I think there was at last count 23 people. In fact, I'm kind of looking at it right now. Let's see, 23 people filled out the doodle poll, and it looks like officially Thursday at 7 has won with 17 votes. So we will do Mondays and Thursdays at 7 o'clock. We should last about an hour both times. So there were about 6 people who couldn't make it Thursday at 7, but half of those could make it at 7:30. So let me be very clear, please, by all means, show up late, right? I mean, if you can't show up at 7, show up when you can show up. I'd rather have you guys show up late than not show up at all. Especially Thursdays, because Thursdays are just going to be mostly a Q&A day. You know, the Mondays are going to be the mini lecture. I'll spend about a half an hour going through a PowerPoint presentation of all of the material for the week. And then after that, it'll be a Q&A session where I'll answer any questions you might have about, you know, what's due, when it's due, how do you do things, you know, those kind of what we call bookkeeping questions. And then also it'll be open for academic questions. You know, if you've started on the homework already, you're like, you know what, I've already started on the homework and I have no idea how to do number 4, then we'll talk about how to do number 4. Or if you just go, you know what, we just talked about it, but I still have no idea what the hell you were talking about on subject blah blah, and we'll go over subject blah blah some more, right? So I try and keep this as informal as possible. You know, we're all adults. You don't want to be lectured to like you're, you know, some child. So I'm going to keep everything as informal as possible. Yes, you do have to learn some stats, but you know, most of it you can learn from watching my videos, which hopefully you guys have all found. In fact, let me go ahead and share my screen while I'm blathering on and on so I can point out some things if you haven't already discovered them. So in our classroom, I'm sure you've already been inundated with all of my announcements, but probably the most important announcement is the Google Drive access one. So if you haven't already bookmarked this, please bookmark this, because literally everything you need for this course is in our Google Drive. And so if you click on that, it'll take you to here. You'll see this stuff. You guys can see my screen, right?
No.
Still on the PowerPoint.
No, we see the PowerPoint.
Oh, you see the PowerPoint. Oh, darn it.
Yes,
okay.
we see the
Thank you. Let me, I must have shared the PowerPoint to the screen. Ah, there we go. Thank you. All right, so let me go back. In the announcements. Now you can see my screen with the announcements and everything. Awesome. Thank you. So the Google Drive here, this access, please bookmark this because it will take you to this place here.
No, you're still on the
We see
meet
the doodle
session.
poll.
Yeah, we see the doodle poll.
Doodle. What's your?
You know, guys, I'm really not an idiot. I swear to God, I know what the hell I'm doing. For some strange reason, it's telling me my right screen is screen 1. Oh, okay. So, all right. So I'm gonna have to change. I don't know why it thinks that's screen 1. Okay. Take 3. Announcements, Google Drive, right? All this stuff is really important, but the Google Drive stuff is really important. Bookmark it, brings you to here. This document is going to be your lifesaver, because in this document are the links to all of the videos on my YouTube channel. So I like, we're recording this one as we speak. It should have recorded right when I started, and let's see, it seems to be recording. Yeah. Oh yeah. So we're good. And then I will post this tonight after we're done, after it renders and all that stuff. But here are 3 copies, and I put the little dates in there just so you know how old they are. And it's really only because technical things have changed, you know, like talking about how things are turned in or stuff like that. But I mean, the materials don't change at all. It's the same homework questions. It's the same mini project. It's the same final project. Everything, all the academic stuff is the same. So the first session of the week is usually, like I said, the lecture stuff. And then there's also some Q&As. But then the second video of every week is pretty much all Q&A. You know, sometimes I'll break into a little mini lecture if people have a bunch of questions on the same topic. But if you need some help with the homework, this is one of the best places to go first, is to watch some of these videos, because chances are somebody else asked about the same exact homework question. And I literally walk you through step by step the whole thing. So it's all right here if you just take the time to watch some things. So this is going to be your best friend. And like I said, I'll just keep adding to them as we go along. The other thing is this one here has all of my lecture videos all in one place. Now I put these also in the classroom. When you're going through the modules, these will be listed, but I put them all here in this space just so they're all in one place as well. So if you're looking for my videos that will help you learn the material, the statistics material for that week, and there's also some on SAS Studio. You can see the ones that are titled SAS Studio will show you how to do certain things in SAS Studio. Notice that there aren't a lot of them because, as I said in various other places, the school no longer requires you guys to do your work in SAS. It used to be a very strong requirement. It's no longer the case. You can use, excuse me, any technology you want. SAS Studio, I still think, is pretty easy to learn. It's extremely powerful. And it is probably, well, I think it's worth most of your time to do it. It really depends on how statistically rigorous your degree is going to be and your dissertation is going to be, right? So depending on the degree you're doing, you probably only have to take this class and an 810, and that's all you have to do statistics wise. And if that's the case, it might not be worth your time learning SAS Studio, although it's still not that hard to learn. If you're thinking that your dissertation is going to be mostly qualitative, you know, you're just going to be maybe taking interviews and talking to people and doing that kind of stuff, and you're not really going to be analyzing large sets of data or doing any kind of advanced analysis of data, then again, it might not be worth your time and energy to learn SAS Studio, especially if you know how to kind of get by with Excel and or a TI graphing calculator or something like that, right? So if you can do the basics that you think you're going to need to do in some other technology, then by all means, you can probably get by with doing that for most of the stuff in this class. And things that you don't know how to do, I can probably show you how to do them, especially if you're talking about a TI graphing calculator or Excel. I'm a pretty big expert in both of those, so I can always help you guys with, you know, if you go, hey, I want to know how to do this on my graphing calculator, I can show you that, or Excel as well. R, if you want to learn R, I'm not your guy. I never took the time to learn R. I learned how to program in SAS way back in the early days before they had this whole SAS on demand thing, which makes it so much easier because it's all point and click menu driven, which is awesome. But I didn't learn R, so don't bother asking me. I can't help you with that. And then there are a whole ton of other online places where you can go to do stats for free. You know, there's Vassar Stats is a pretty cool website. StatCrunch is an awesome place to do statistics. It's really easy to use, but they do charge you money. So if you're interested, I'll put it up here just so you can see it. StatCrunch, right? StatCrunch.com. And it's a really easy to use, yet still quite rigorous program. It can do some pretty advanced stuff, and it's pretty darn easy to use. As you can see, it's all just menu driven, just like SAS On Demand is, right? So you don't have to worry about any kind of coding or anything like that. So it's a pretty cool program. It's especially easy, or it's especially helpful when it comes to dealing with the normal curve and doing stuff like that, because it has these great calculators where you can put things in here and you can get answers really easy to normal curve questions if you come across those. I don't really think we have much of those in this class, but anyhow, I think it costs like $12 for a 6-month license or something like that. And a lot of students have bought it in the past and really liked it because, like I said, it's easy to learn. And there are literally thousands of videos on YouTube showing you how to use StatCrunch to do just about anything you want to do with it. So it's got a great resource, for it. So that's an option. But I still, if you aren't already an expert in something else, okay, so you don't know how to do statistics really well on your TI calculator or Excel or some other technology, then what I would suggest is go ahead and spend the time and learn SAS Studio. It's not that hard. It's free, right? And in 810, you might have a professor who only knows SAS Studio. So remember, the school used to only teach in SAS, and they hired all of their adjuncts, everybody, and made us all, learn SAS if we didn't already know it. And then they very quietly made the shift, and SAS was no longer the only tech. I mean, seriously, all of a sudden the policy had changed and they didn't tell any of us. I'm still sitting here talking about doing SAS, and my students are like, hey, I don't think we have to do this anymore. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I contacted the chair. He's like, oh yeah, we did away with that. I'm like, oh, it would have been nice if you had told us. So I think there are a lot of 810 instructors out there who still only do stuff in SAS. So like when they're lecturing and they're showing you guys how to do things, they're going to be doing it in SAS. And if you stop and say, hey, can you show me how to do that in Excel? They're probably going to say no. So that's why I tell my students that it probably behooves you to kind of learn how to do things in SAS Studio anyways, because you might get stuck with somebody in 810 who isn't as versatile with technology as I am. Okay. I am still going to show you how to do everything in SAS Studio. That's going to be my default. And I'm only going to show you how to do things in other technologies if you ask. I'm happy to do so. So please don't think like you don't want to ask. Like, I don't want to be the one person who asks for Excel. Please ask. I just don't want to take the time to show you how to do things in 3 different technologies when probably the vast majority of you are just going to use SAS Studio anyways. At least that's my assumption. Okay. If you really hate SAS Studio and you really don't want to do SAS Studio, or you want to augment it one way or the other, then I would suggest Excel being your second choice, because employers really, really, really want people to have Excel skills. So anything you can do to spend some more time futzing around with Excel and learning how to play around with Excel will just make you that much more marketable to whatever, job you apply for. Okay, so I think I've covered those basics. Any questions on anything I've discussed so far?
Yes, when we use the SAS, in Excel, when you input the data in the spreadsheet, you can see all the formulas you insert in the cells, when you're calculating all. But the SAS is not going to show you, it's showing you only the code, import the code, something like that,
You
so
can
don't know what formula,
You can see the data in SAS, and I'll show you where you go to see that. And it does show up in a spreadsheet that looks just like Excel, but it's not going to be a spreadsheet that you can edit. So it's not a live spreadsheet like in Excel where you can go click on a cell and change a value or sort it or do anything that kind of stuff. But it will display all the data in a spreadsheet form in SAS. If you want to do any kind of data manipulation, like you want to sort things out, you want to clean up your data or do any kind of simple manipulations of your data, you will always want to do that in Excel first and then upload it into SAS. Because all of your data files are, they're here for one thing in the Google Drive, and they're all in Excel files, right? I mean, they're basically Google Sheets, but if you download them, they download and convert to an Excel file. And then once you download them, you can upload them straight into SAS. And if you read this first, I talk about how you can use the zip file and you can download all of them all at once rather than week by week. So I broke them up by week in projects in case you just said, hey, I want to look at the data that we use in week 3 or something like that. But most likely, most of you are going to want all of the data for all of the weeks. So you're better off downloading the zip file, unzipping it, which puts all of the Excel files all in one folder, one place. And then when you go to SAS On Demand, you can literally upload all of them all at once. Saves you a boatload of time. Okay. And if you read this, it'll walk you through that process. Any other questions on this kind of stuff?
I had a quick question.
Yeah, Amy.
Hi. I just had a quick question about the different programs. I mean, is there an advantage or disadvantage to SAS, R, or SPSS? I mean, is one more powerful than another?
SAS and R are the gold standard for any kind of statistical analysis, really worldwide. They are both the most powerful, robust statistical analysis tools available to the general public. R came along because SAS originally was a very expensive program and schools had to purchase it and students had to purchase it. And R is an open resource, basically copy of it, right? It's almost like they did a knockoff of SAS and they did an open resource version of it. And basically just a bunch of stats nerds around the globe started creating this program and just started adding to it. And it's taken off like wildfire. And it's very popular because it's free. In response to that, SAS went, oh crap, we're losing market share. Let's put out a free version of SAS, call it SAS Studio, house it on the internet. And we're now going to give people a web-based, point and click kind of menu thing, which R doesn't have. And so that's how they're trying to win the game back to them. So those are the two best. SPSS is kind of what people consider to be like SAS light. It's not as robust as SAS. It's not as widely thought of well by stat. It's not as rigorous. It's not rigorous enough. It's kind of like this. And SAS would be for people who are getting a PhD. SPSS would be for people who are getting a master's. It's kind of that difference in level of sophistication, if that makes sense. And then everything else kind of falls below those. So those would be the only options people would really ever use in academia. Since you guys are all in a doctoral program, I would say stay away from SPSS. It would probably be fine, but it depends on who's on your committee. If you get a true statistician on your committee, they're going to look down their nose at SPSS. If you have like a sociologist statistician, they probably use SPSS, so they're probably fine with it. It's more for the soft sciences. Okay, so the hard sciences will always use SAS, and the softer sciences like sociology, psychology, things like that, they'll tend to use SPSS sometimes. I think I've hopefully over-explained that.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, I've used SPSS before, and I just didn't know if it had, how it compared to SAS. So I appreciate that you're teaching us the gold standard.
And you could probably get away with doing SPSS and you'd be fine. Like I wouldn't care, and probably your 810 instructors wouldn't care as well. And SPSS is going to be powerful enough to do everything you're going to need to do in this course for sure, and everything that I've seen in 810 as well. So if you want to stick with it, that'd be fine. But yeah, I think it behooves all of you guys to spend a little time to learn it, because it really isn't that hard, guys. I mean, it literally is a point and click menu driven kind of thing. There are sometimes some certain things that you need to do some simple coding to get it to do what you really want it to do. But I have all of that code here for you So really all you have to do is copy and paste. So if you go into the SAS stuff folder, there's this SAS how-to guide. And in this guide, I break it down week by week, everything we're doing. And I show you the menu structure of how to do something in the menus. And then if there's something that either needs to be or can be done a lot better with coding, then I give you the little simple code that you literally just copy and paste into an empty little window and run it and you know, get what you get out of that. And it just takes a little futzing around with it to get it to work right. But if you treat it, you know, a little bit like it's almost like a little mystery to solve rather than, you know, something that you don't understand, it's not frustrating. It's kind of fun to play around with. You can't break it, right? So screw around with it and see what you can get it to do. I had a student last year who decided that she was really going to play around with SAS, and she started coming up with these elaborate codes to do some amazing stuff. In fact, this is her code here that did a really cool stuff. So I stole it from her. I'm like, look, I'm going to use this in my future classes because this is amazing. And she was fine with it. And she was very proud of what she learned, and she should have been, because, you know, she did it all on her own and really learned some cool stuff in SAS. So just take that it's pretty easy to learn. and I'll help you guys along the way for sure. Oh crap, somehow the chat window got closed. All right.
So Dr. McBride, I have a question.
Yes.
Just listening to your reference to class 810, are you teaching class 810?
Yeah, people always ask because I'm so awesome. They want me to be in 810 as well. But so far I have not taught 810, and I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Well, I think you should teach it next semester.
I hear that.
Suggestion.
I hear that every term, and I do truly appreciate it. Probably not. I've got enough going on in the fall that I really don't want to have a new prep, you know, because I've never taught it before. So I don't think it'll happen anytime soon. They have a lot of 810 instructors with seniority over me that, you know, when the course is open, they kind of take them before anybody else does. But I might teach it eventually. But here's the thing. Just because I'm not teaching you 810 doesn't mean you can't still ask me questions. So even when the course is over, you'll still have my email. So by all means, shoot me an email and say, hey, you know, my 810 instructor is not explaining this well. Can you help? And I can always try and help. I'm happy to do so, you know, if I have the time. And I've had students take me up on that in the past. So don't be afraid to be one of those students. Geostorm is not from Fortnite, but thank you for trying, Lloyd.
It's a really terrible sci-fi movie from 2017, is it not?
It is, but there is a podcast that I listen to religiously that I love very much called How Did This Get Made? And they did an episode of Geostorm, and the running joke is they just kept screaming the word Geostorm. And they put out this shirt, and they said, I really want you guys to just show up in a random place in public and scream out Geostorm. And there's videos of guys like walking into a lecture hall just going Geostorm and then walking out. And I've always been waiting, you know, to show up with this shirt and have some random student yell Geostorm, and my little heart would just grow 4 sizes that day to know that there was another nerd that knew the show. So oh, yeah, a Geostorm, very good. Yes, the car. Okay, so let's take a quick look at SAS Studio before we get into the lecture material. If you haven't already enrolled in SAS Studio, all the information on how to do it is all in the course, as well as in here in this in this folder. It's really quite easy. You go in, you register with your academic email, and then I think it's within 24 hours, you should get an email back from them saying that you've been registered, you know, and it gives you like a link or something to get you to the area where you can actually log in. Let me see if I can log out and show you that login. Yeah.
Dr. McBride, did I go to the wrong location if it was asking me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. Because I think I remember what you were talking about, and you don't need any kind of course code or anything like that. Once you register, you should come to this screen, SAS On Demand for Academics Sign In. Once you click accept and you sign in, then you'll get to the screen where I was at before. The problem is I think you might have clicked on enrollment or courses. You don't want to do that. The default should be applications. All you need to do is click here where it says SAS Studio, and it's going to open a brand new browser tab with SAS Studio in that tab. And that's it. You don't need to enroll in anything. You don't have to have a course code, none of that stuff. So I think probably what had happened is maybe you had clicked on one of those other tabs, and that's where the confusion came from. Because if you do this, here we are, ta-da, we're in SAS Studio. And that's all you got to do. And now you're ready to go. All you need to do now is upload some data, and you can start futzing around with SAS. So over here under server files and folders, you should have a link for files. And if you click that, I think the only folder it gives you by default is the SAS user version 9.4. What I did is I right clicked on here and did new folder and just created a new folder to call it data files. And that's where I upload all my data files. Now you guys can upload your data files wherever you want. A lot of students just upload them straight into the SAS user thing. But I like to have a little folder for my data files and then a little folder for my programs, just so I can always grab my programs when I want to, run a special program. Now, as far as uploading data goes, it's really simple. So if you click on a folder, right? So you can see how when you click on it, it's gray and it's highlighted. And now this little icon. Yes.
We can't see that side of the screen. Well, I can. I don't know if anybody else can, but I can't see what you're doing to the left over there.
Can anybody else see it? Yeah, I think maybe you have to change your zoom out on your screen or something.
Oh, yeah. Don't pay attention to me.
Okay, so when you click on any of the folders, it highlights them, and then it makes this icon active, which is the upload icon. So if you click on this, you just click on choose files, and then you literally just find the folder that has your files in it, right? So like if I clicked on this and hit open because it's an Excel file, it's going to try and upload whatever data is in that Excel file. And it'll just upload the file, right? So then you'll have the file here once you hit upload. So that's where you're going to want to use that zip file, download all the zips into one folder. So when you do the whole upload and choose files, right, you can choose multiple. See, if I could click on these, I can upload all of these at the same time. So if I had them all in one folder, you could just do, control all, control A, and highlight all of them and then hit open, and it'll upload all of your files all at once rather than having to do one at a time, which is a big fat waste of time. Okay, so that's the first thing to teach you guys, is so you can upload some data files so you can work with these things next week. We don't have to work with any data files this week. So if you haven't already gotten into SAS, don't panic. You're not behind. You got plenty of time to do it. Just sometime during this week, make sure that you enroll with SAS. Oh, and that email that they send you with like the login information, it oftentimes goes to your spam folder. So just after you do the first little bit of registration where you put in your name and your school email address and all that junk, just keep a close eye on your spam folder. Just keep checking it every, at least every day, and see if you find something in there from SAS Studio or something, with SAS in the title. Because I've had a lot of students go, hey, it's been like 3 days and I haven't seen that email. I'm like, well, check your spam folder. And they check and they go, oh, there it is. Right. So it goes to spam a lot. So just check that. Okay. So we will be dealing with this next week. So don't worry about it. Just like I said, get enrolled, get registered, and get all of your data files uploaded. If you can do all of that this week, you're ahead of the game. Okay. So this week's homework, as far as SAS is concerned, I just want you all to be able to get your data files uploaded. Right. So that means get registered, get on the program, get your data files uploaded. And that's all you need to do this week. And if you want to, work ahead, if you want to start looking at the week 2 stuff and start futzing around with this thing, go for it, man. Because all you got to do is, go watch some of my videos on what the SAS or what the stats is about, and then go watch some of these videos for week 2. And I'll walk you through in the video. I walk everybody through how to do stuff in SAS. So you can always work ahead in this class if you want to, because all the materials are here for you. Okay, I think that's it enough for all the bookkeeping stuff. If there are no other bookkeeping type questions, we can actually talk about the statistics for this week, the actual lecture stuff.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so when I went to the Google Files and I clicked on the data set and clicked on the data files where it says data file zip, I tried clicking on them, to save them, to get them to download, but mine's is not opening.
Okay. You mean the file that you downloaded isn't opening, or it's not opening here in the Google Drive?
It's not opening in the Google Drive.
Okay, so what you want to do is when you want to right click on it and click download.
Right click on it. So don't click in it, just click.
Just right click on it. Yeah, so for the zip file, you just want to right click on the zip file. And guys, this is how Google folders work in general. If you want to download anything from a Google folder, the easiest thing to do is always right click it and choose download. If you click something, you can go up here to the 3 little action buttons and then choose download from there as well. But I find it much quicker just to right click and then do whatever you want to do with your Google Drive there, so you can make a copy, you can rename it, right? You can delete it, you can download it. Please don't delete it, because I don't think you have delete. I think you only have view options, so you can only view it and download it. I don't think any of you can delete them, hopefully. But yeah, so just click that and that'll download a copy, to your computer somewhere. And you can tell it where, because it'll pop. Well, I'll show you what happens. You do this, you hit download, and then a little window will pop up. And then you can, go over here and choose where you want to put it on your computer and then hit save and it'll go there.
Okay, got it.
Cool. Anything else from anybody?
Okay, so I don't want to be the one to keep asking questions.
No.
But when I
go for it.
Okay, I'll figure it out.
Are you sure?
Yes,
Okay.
I don't want to hold up for us.
Okay, play around with it, and if you still have problems at the end of class, you and I can talk one-on-one and make sure that you get it downloaded. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Okay, anything else from anybody? All right, then let's talk about the materials.
I would like to say something real quick. I just
Sure.
wanted to tell Cherie, I hope that's how you pronounce your name. No question is a bad question, because it's probably a question that I'll have later in the week.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
feel free.
absolutely. Yeah, and I wanted to say something along those lines, that please don't ever be afraid to be that student that keeps asking questions, because I guarantee you there are other students in this class right now that have that same question in mind. You're just beating them to the punch. So, and guys, I hope you're getting from the tone of my voice and from the relaxed nature so far of this meet session that interrupt me, right? Stop me. If you have questions, ask them. I mean, that's really what I'm here for more than anything else. So let's keep it light. Let's keep it fun. Let's keep it friendly. And by all means, ask. There is no such thing as a stupid question, only stupid teachers. So ask away. Okay. All right. And please know that these are all jokes, people. Okay. So the topics for this week, right? I've tried to expunge everything from Canvas that does not apply to us, but you might still see some remnants that I missed. One of those remnants being groups, being assigned to groups. That is something that they do in 807, is they normally will assign you to a group of other people to work with. I don't do that. I think that's the dumbest thing in the world, to take a bunch of adults with, jobs and schedules and go, okay, you 5 are going to be a group. Really? You think those 5 people are going to have time, together they're all going to be available at the same time? This is stupid. So I'm not going to assign you to groups, but you are always more than welcome to work in groups. And in fact, I strongly encourage you to work in groups. Getting a PhD is a community affair. Not only do you need the support of your family and your friends, you need the support of your classmates. So lean on each other and help each other and form study groups by all means. But I'm going to leave it up to you all to figure out who has a schedule similar enough to you that you can find time, and who you want to work with, because you might have, a personality clash with somebody. So we'll leave that all up to you. We've talked about SAS, student expectations and instructor expectations. Okay, so my expectations of you guys are really pretty easy. First and foremost, please just follow instructions. I'm not a hard ass for most things, but there are a few things that I'm really a stickler on, and it's mainly the early submission of homework if you want me to review your homework ahead of time. So I think I put a fairly detailed explanation, in the announcements and in the actual homework. So if you go to homework 1, it'll be in the description of that, and it'll tell you exactly what you need to do. And basically it just means that here's the key points. 1, if you want me to review your stuff, you have to get it to me no later than, I think I put 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. Pacific time on Friday morning, because I'm going to look at them when I get up Friday and get them back to you Friday afternoon. And then that way it gives you the weekend to make changes if you have to make changes. Number 2, you have to email them to me through something other than Canvas. Don't send it through Canvas messages, because Canvas messages does not handle attachments well. You have to send it outside of Canvas, right? Preferably use your school email address, but you can use your personal email address. I don't care, but just email it to me at my school email address, right? My craig.mcbride@franklin.edu. All that information is, in the syllabus and in the course, but you need to email it directly that way, because then the attachments work. And then I can reply to you with the attachments, and it gets back to you easily. So Canvas just doesn't work well with attachments. In addition to that, it has to be in one Word document only. And it has to be a Word document, not a Google Doc, not Pages, not a PDF, nothing else, but it's got to end in .doc or .docx, right? The old style Word or the new style Word. I don't care which, but it's just got to be a Word document, because I'm going to use track changes. I'm going to turn track changes on, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to cross stuff out, and I'm going to write in things, and I'm going to put all sorts of comments all over the place if you've got stuff wrong, and then send it back to you. And then you'll be able to see the stuff that's wrong. You'll be able to see my comments, because you'll turn track changes on so you can see it. And then you can go in there and you can delete all that crap and change change whatever needs to be changed, and then submit it for real. And then the only other thing is, you've got to title it properly. And this is just to save me the headache of trying to figure out, which file goes with which person. I've got 2 different sections. So you've got to start the file with whatever section you're in, either E1 or E2. And if you haven't noticed your section, it's at the top of the course, right? So if you're in E1, it's going to say E1 up here. And if you're in E2, it's going to say E2 WW. So it's just going to be E1, your last name, and then whatever the hell you want to call it, homework 1, homework 2, whatever, or, E2 and your last name, blah, blah, blah. I don't think there are any of you with the same last name, so I don't have to worry about, last name, comma, first. Let me just check really quick. There's nobody. Let's see. No common last names in there. And there's probably not any in number 2, but let's just double check. I mean, if any of you know that you've got someone in there with the same last name, then you don't. You just got to put, your first name. It looks like we're good. Okay. So you don't have to worry about putting your first initial or anything like that. Just, E2, last name, and then anything else. And then that way I can, when I download them all into a folder and I start going through them, I know which course you're in and which person you are. So I can put, because if you send me your stuff and it's all good, I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to put 100 for your grade, and you're not going to have to submit anything, right? So I need to know who you are and what class you're in, so I can go to the class really quick and I can find you and I can put your score in, right? And that happens a lot. People will turn stuff in early and I'll take a look at it, and even if it has like one small little error, I'm just like, it's not worth your time to resubmit. I'm just going to give you the 100 points. Let's move on, right? So it saves everybody a lot of time. As far as the submissions go, if you haven't seen it, right, when you are going through the modules and you get to, right, so in the unit 1 preparation, in the preparation page for all the modules will be my videos that are also on that Google Doc that I showed you. And then in the second page basically talks about our class meeting, It's kind of the same thing every week. It's kind of a wasted page, in my opinion. Then there's the doctoral dialogue, which you guys definitely want to use, right? This is your discussion board where you guys can bounce things off each other. Hey, I'm working on question 11 and I'm stumped. Any suggestions on, where I can go, that kind of thing. So feel free to use this to do that. And then next it'll come up. So here's the homework. Here's some more videos. On the homework stuff, usually I just put the technical videos, like how to use SAS, how to use R, how to use Excel, right? So those are all going to be on all of the homework screens. And then at the bottom, it's going to list the numbers that you need to do. Here's the instructions on how you submit it early. Here's the rubric that no longer applies, so ignore it completely. Excuse me. And then at the top, I think in student view, there's a place where you submit. Let's see, in student view. Yeah, there it is. I think if you hit start assignment, there you go. Then you just upload a file right there. So if you don't send it to me for review, or if you do, and then you have to fix things and still have to submit it, this is where you would submit, right? You click upload file, you would choose your file, and you would upload a file at that point. Again, it's best if you upload a Word document, but I will allow PDFs in this case. Just know that if you upload a PDF, I can't give you as detailed notes within it if you submit something that still isn't perfect, right? So if I have to tell you what's wrong, it's much better if it's in a Word document. So really, it would be best if you just do everything in Word documents in this course, because it makes it a lot easier for me to communicate with you anything that needs to be changed. Okay. Questions on any of that junk?
Sorry to, here
Nope,
I am being the
don't
one asking a
apologize.
ton of questions.
Yep, no, go for it.
I was just wondering about how you wanted the homework assignments formatted. I mean, are you wanting APA, like a big title page?
No,
or...
not at all. No. Great question. Thank you so much. I don't want title pages on anything, even the mini project and the final project. You don't have to worry about that. You can, by all means, especially the final project, put a title page on it. Homework is just a homework set. And I gave you guys copies of all of the homework sets here. So if you click on this, you'll see that I gave you, these are the questions, and they're editable, right? So, don't waste time retyping all of these questions out of the book. Just come here and download this document and then put your answers within it. So I would say the easiest thing, and what I prefer, is for you to come along and just, give yourself some space, and then here's my answer, right? As long as there's some space in between them, I know that this is where your answer is starting. And especially if you do this, right? It's not indented. If you're going to answer, like some people want to answer right here. Well, if you're going to do that, then if you don't want to put a big space, then at least put it in another color, right? Or highlight it, right? In Word, you can use a highlighter and things like that. So just do something so when I'm going through them quickly, I can find your answers quickly. But that's all I really, care about as far as formatting is concerned, is to basically make it as easy as possible for me to grade them. Right. So
thank you so much for preparing these documents for us.
Oh yeah. It was, I
didn't read that at first, and I tried to copy and paste from the ebook, and it was horrible. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I figured after teaching this once or twice, I was like, God, this is a waste of everybody's time. Let me just do this really quick for everybody, and then the student will never have to do it again. Yeah. So that's really easy for you guys. And then, like I said, the final project, you should probably put a title page in the final project, because the final project, and we'll talk about this much later, it's almost going to be like a little mini trial run of the first 3 or 4 chapters of your dissertation. It's going to be a very watered down piece of your dissertation. You're not going to do a lit review, obviously, but you're going to do a little bit of the methodology where you talk about, what kind of stats you're going to run and why. And then you're going to do a little bit of the results chapter, because you're going to talk about your results. And so it's good if you can use this as a dry run practice and kind of put some stuff in there that later on you could maybe copy and paste to your dissertation. I'm never going to grade anything via APA. I'm never going to take anything off for, bad grammar and that kind of stuff. This is not an English class. Although you should, strive your best to, communicate as clearly as possible. It's really going to be, did you do the work? Did you show your work? Is it correct? That kind of thing. Okay. Awesome. Anything else? Okay. Back to the slides. Okay, so those are my student expectations. As far as the instructor expectations are, you can expect that I will always get your work back to you. The school makes us get it back to you within a week. I usually grade things within a day, usually 2 at the latest. And in a rare instance, it'll take 3 days for bigger things like the mini projects and stuff like that, especially if I'm busy. But usually most things are going to be back to you within a day or 2. So you can expect that. You can definitely expect that if you email me, you will hear back from me within 24 hours. So if you don't hear back from me within 24 hours, I didn't get your email. Now, that doesn't apply over the weekend. That's Monday through Friday. I do take weekends off. So if you email me Friday night, you might hear from me over the weekend if I happen to be on my computer and feeling, saucy enough to do some work. But I try to unplug and family time on the weekends, so you might not hear from me until Monday. What else can I tell you? I think that's probably it as far as what you can expect from me. You can expect, the jokes just keep getting worse. And that's about it. Okay. So the other stuff we're going to talk about this week this first week is very vocabulary heavy. So I apologize because I always hate teaching vocabulary in a stats class because it's a stats class, not a vocabulary class, but we have to make sure that we're talking the same language. And then we're going to, talk a lot about sampling, and sampling is really important. Okay. This is another place where things are going to be different from what it says in the course. That's why I said ignore the rubric, because for one thing, your homeworks are now worth 100 points each week instead of 110 points, because I don't force you into groups. And part of that rubric was you're supposed to turn in a peer evaluation form, basically evaluating the members of your group. And that was worth the other 10 points. And I'm like, well, that's just a waste of everybody's time. So it's 100 points, and it's based on, did you do the work and did you get it right? It's that simple, right? And there's 5 of those. So there's your 500 points. The mini project, I think, also is slightly different than the rubric because I had to move things around, right, to make the points all make sense. But it's 150 points. The article critique that you're going to do is 100 points. And then the final project is 250 to give you the grand total of 1,000. So if you see anything that contradicts this in the course, let me know so I can try and go in there and change it for future. But definitely ignore the rubrics. For the most part, they're not right. I mean, the mini project, the critique, and the final project, the rubrics, I mean, you can look at them as far as what it talks about, what you're expected to do in general, but don't pay really close attention to what the point values are, because the point values won't match. Right. Okay. SAS, we've talked about SAS, and I've showed you how to kind of get started. So I won't beat that dead horse, right? Just make sure that you get going on it for next week. Okay. Again, I talked about how to submit things, but we also are obviously going to expect you guys, your PhD students, you're going to get things in on time. And if you aren't, you're going to communicate with me and let me know what's going on so we can make proper arrangements. Okay. And then of course, I'm going to expect you guys to keep asking those questions because that's really, really important. Yeah. So here's what the school says: 5 days. I usually do it quicker, and I've talked about everything else. Okay. So let's get into definitions. So everything in statistics really comes down to 2 things. You're either dealing with a population or you're dealing with a sample. You're almost never dealing with a population. It's really almost impossible to ever have a population of data unless the population you're concerned with is so small that you can deal with it. So if you only want to study and learn about the students at your school, then of course you can gather the data on that population because that's a manageable population. But if you want to study the students at your school in hopes of making generalizations about all students across the country, that are in similar schools, then that population is going to be impossible to gather data from. And you're going to have to instead use your school as a sample, right? Which is simply just a subset of the larger population you're trying to understand something about. Because really that's what statistics is about, is we're trying to guess what's happening in some sort of group by looking at a subset of that group, because we're unable to look at the entire group, right? I mean, that's really what statistics is all about. So whenever you do have a population of data and you're able to run some sort of a statistical analysis, like get a mean or a standard deviation or do correlation, right? Or just do any kind of analysis of the data, those results are called parameters because they're based on the population with a P, parameter with a P. However, if you're dealing with a sample and you run those same analyses, you get a mean, you get a mode, you get a median, you get a standard deviation, you get correlation, whatever it happens to be. Those are simply just called statistics because they're now done on a sample, right? So it's nice. Sample, statistics, population, parameter. And so it's easy to remember because they go together alphabetically. As far as how they're displayed, anytime you see results listed with Greek letters, those are always parameters. So if you see the Greek letter mu, which looks like a cursive U, then that's talking about the mean of the population. And then I don't know why I'm saying this and when I could be writing it. So for instance,
Dr. McBride?
Yes, sir.
I have a question. How do you determine the proper sample size?
That's a great question. The answer is as big as you can make it.
Okay.
I mean, really, honestly, in statistics, bigger is better. So you always want to gather as much data as possible. Now, there are formulas for figuring out a minimum sample size in order to keep your error as small as you want to keep it, right? So if you want to keep your error rate, and I hate that word error because it always sounds like I'm saying it wrong, but your error rate, if you want to keep it within 3%, then you have to get a sample of size X. But if you want to keep it within 5%, you only need a sample of size, Y, and so on and so forth. So there are calculations to determine how big your sample has to be if you want to have your error a certain smallness. Other than that, it really comes down to take as big as you can. And usually the only constraints on how big your sample is money and time, right? Because it's going to cost money to gather data. It's going to take time to gather data.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. So this is mu, right? And that means mean for a parameter. And then usually X bar is a statistic for a sample. So whenever you see regular letters, we're talking about samples. So for instance, the standard deviation is usually just an S, whereas a standard deviation in your sample is lowercase sigma, right? So you're going to get all these kinds of things. When we're talking about correlation, you guys have probably talked about Pearson correlation as being R. Well, it's rho for the population. And then of course it's R for your sample. So you'll just kind of see that pattern over and over again, that Greek letters are always population and regular letters, what do they call them? What's our alphabet? It's like the Hebrew alphabet or something like that.
Arabic.
Arabic. Thank you. Yeah, our regular Arabic letters are considered for the samples. Okay.
So Dr. McBride, sorry to keep asking questions, and this is just a nerd thing. So we said it's hard to get an entire population. The 2020 census data has now been published. Would you consider that a sample since there's non-response, or
no, absolutely.
do you consider that a population?
No, absolutely. It's still a sample. Yeah, absolutely. If you ever look at our census data closely, you will see that it is, excuse my French, a shitty set of data. It is terrible. They try really hard, but I think the last time I looked, they estimated that they only got something like 70% of the population at best. A lot of times they're lucky to get 50. That's not a parameter at all. That's not a population at all. It's the best we can do, right? I mean, it's definitely the best data we have, and it's better than any other sample. But oh yeah, it's still definitely a sample. Yeah, and it would literally be impossible to ever get a population of data for the United States, because in the amount of time it would take to gather that data, you would have people die and you would have other people be born, right? So it's a constantly moving target that we could never get. Yeah, so great
I got a
question.
question to follow up on that. So you get 70%, but based on what you're getting from the 70%, is the 30% that you don't know about enough to change the trend?
That's a great question, Eduardo. And the answer is absolutely 100% yes, because there's a thing called voluntary response bias. And even though the census, quote unquote, is not thought of as being completely voluntary, it still is completely voluntary, right? They can't force you to fill out the census. They encourage you strongly to do so, but it's still everybody's choice whether or not they fill it out. And researchers have done numerous studies. They've done these studies over and over and over again, and they have validated the results that show the type of people who do not voluntarily fill out surveys are statistically significantly different from the people who do fill them out. So that 30% is going to be significantly different than the 70% who filled it out. Ergo, any generalizations you make on that 70% is not necessarily going to be true for the entire population. Which is why in statistics, we never say the answer is this. We say we're 95% sure the answer is close to this. And it's because of that. Great question. Okay, some more definitions. And by all means, keep jumping in and interrupting me. An experimental unit, right, is just the basic thing on which you're measuring. So it's the basic thing that you're interested in. So if you want to know what makes teens act violently, like you're doing some research to help curb teen violence, then your experimental unit would be each individual teen that you're looking at. And then the measurement units they confuse students because it seems like it should be something more than it is, but a measurement unit is literally just the unit of measure that you use on whatever data you're gathering. So on those teens, if you get their age in years, then the measurement unit is years. If you get their height in centimeters, then the measurement unit is centimeters. If you get their height, however, in inches, then the measurement unit is inches, right? So measurement units are literally just units of measure. Inches, feet, pounds, kilograms, those kinds of things. The experimental unit is the thing that's being measured. The person that's being measured, the car that's being weighed, the house that's being measured, whatever that you're studying. Okay, factors are the things that you can control, right? They're the variables in your quote unquote experiment that you set. They're the things that you want to look at. And then the response are the variables that you look at that, in fact, respond, right, to the factors, right? So you have basically factors and response. They're sometimes called inputs and outputs. They're sometimes called independent and dependent. They've got a lot of different names, but it's basically just the factors are the things that you can manipulate. And then the response variables are the things that you don't manipulate. You just observe how they change based on what you did with the factors, right? I give this group of kids Ritalin. I give this group of kids some different medicine. And then, so that's the factor, right? The different type of medicine they got is the factor. That's the thing that I have control. One group getting medicine A, one group getting medicine B, maybe group C getting no medicine at all. And then the response, the thing that I observe is how many violent outbursts they have in a week, right? So that's how those things work. And then treatments and controls, we've all, heard about these before. The treatment group is the group that is getting one of those medications that I talked about. And of course, the control group is the group that doesn't get any medication at all. And these obviously only apply when you have an actual real experiment where you have a treatment and a control group. The vast majority of you are never going to conduct an experiment. I mean, really, honestly, I've never conducted an experiment. Most of us just do observational studies where we have a group of things and we observe what goes on with them. And then we try and make some statistical analysis based on that. We don't have the luxury of being able to force them into a control group and a treatment group and treat them separately. A lot of times just because it's for ethical reasons. You know, if you're trying to figure out if a medication works with kids, it's not really ethical to withhold it from one group and then give it to another, you know, unless it's already, you know, experimental. So there's a lot of reasons why experiments don't happen a lot, especially for us. We have to leave those to the people in the white coats in the labs. All right, so here's a typical example. We've got 3 different fertilizers we want to try. One of them is currently in use. We're going to choose 10 different fields. We're going to divide each of the fields into 3 sectors so we can put 1 fertilizer in each of those sectors. So the population, the thing that we're concerned about is basically all cornfields, not just our 10 fields, right? Our 10 fields is a sample that we're going to try and generalize to all cornfields. Maybe it's all cornfields in Nebraska. Maybe it's all cornfields in America. Maybe it's all cornfields worldwide. It doesn't really matter. We would just have to make sure that our sample is representative based on, you know, the population that we're going to try and generalize to. The sample, of course, would be our 10 fields. The experimental unit, right? The things that are each getting measured are each of those sections of the field. So in this case, we would have how many experimental units? Very good, Amy, 30. Yes, I saw you mouth it without your speaker or microphone on. Perfect. Yeah. And then the factors, of course, would be the types of fertilizer, because we're choosing which section gets which type of fertilizer. The treatments, right, are the actual fertilizers that's being used in each field. So you can see the treatments and factors are often kind of the same thing. The factors just talk about them being a group of things, whereas the treatments usually talk about them individually, right? And then the response is going to be, obviously, we're going to be concerned with probably yield of corn, or in this case, growth, right? So they're gonna measure which one grows higher, or, you know, I think you'd probably be more concerned with which field yields more tons of corn, would seem like a more logical thing, but, you know, I didn't write this. Okay, confounding variables they're kind of like the invisible insect that's bugging you. You can't figure out where it's coming from, but it's screwing with your things, right? So in this case, it's actually insects could be one of the confounding variables, but in statistics, a confounding variable is something that you're not accounting for that is going to actually influence those response variables. So for instance, our response variable is we were just looking at our corn yield, and we're thinking that the only difference between, you know, one section and the other is the type of fertilizer they have. So if we see a difference in yield between one section and the other, we're going to make the assumption that the fertilizer caused it, right? That was the influence that made the difference. But we can't, you know, correlation is not causation, right? We can't say that it actually caused that difference, because there could be all sorts of confounding variables that also have an effect on why one field performed better than another. Some examples would be if there were insects in one part of a field and not in another, if there was different soil in one part of the field or another. Even though, you know, it's a section of the field, one field might get more water than another, or one section might even get more water than the other, right? So there's all sorts of things that could screw with your results that would be considered confounding variables. And again, that's one of the main reasons why when we see this result and we go, hey, look at every field that had fertilizer A had a higher yield. Well, we can't just come out and say fertilizer A is the better fertilizer. We can just say that the data seems to show that fertilizer A is better. There could be other things in effect. And that's confounding variables.
And
okay.
with this, would we be assuming that all of these, I mean, I know this is just a sample problem,
yeah.
But I'm a science geek, I apologize.
No.
But I mean, we would also be making assumptions that all of these cornfields were contiguous and were exposed to the same weather.
Exactly. Yes,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And in an experiment, you always try and control for as many confounding variables as you can, like weather patterns, insects, soil types, irrigation. You would try and control for all of those things. And there are ways to control out most confounding variables so that you can get very strong results. It's pretty hard to control out all confounding variables, but usually you can get out most of them. Okay, different types of sampling design. You've got random, cluster, systematic, stratified, convenience. You can look them all up, people, and figure out what they all mean. I don't want to spend a lot of time here since we're already over time, but the bottom line is you always want to try for the gold standard, which is the simple random sample, SRS, simple random sample, which is different from just a random sample. A random sample means that every object that is being sampled has the same probability of being sampled. A simple random sample has that property, but it has the added property that in addition to every individual item having the same probability of being sampled, every subset, so every group of 5 items or every group of 10 items would also have the same probability of being selected as any other group of 5 items or 10 items. Now, a lot of students go, well, how can they all have the same probability of being sampled and yet a subset of 5 not have the same probability as another subset of 5? Well, I'll give you a very simple example. You want to know something about your students. You look at the roster of all of your students' names. You want to take 10% of your population of students. So you want to sample 10% of your students. So you randomly choose a number between 1 and 10. And then you go on your list. So let's say you choose 7. You go and you pick the 7th person on the list, and then you pick every 10th person after that. So you go 7, 17, 27, 37, blah, 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 blah. That will give you exactly 10% of your list, and it's random. They all had the exact same chance of being chosen. They all had a 10% chance of being chosen because it all came down to how that first number between 1 and 10 was chosen. But you can see that the subset of, let's say, the first 5 people being in your sample has a probability of 0, whereas the probability of, the 7th, the 17th, and the 27th has a probability of 1, right? So because of that kind of systematicness of your sampling, you've gotten rid of the simple random sample of every subset having the same. The only way to have a simple random sample is to literally do the names from a hat idea. And you would take all of your student IDs and you would just randomly choose, you would have a computer just randomly pick 10% of them, right? So it's just randomly going, beep, 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 taking, it's like taking X number of names out of a hat. That's a simple random sample. Simple random sample. The big confusion comes between cluster and stratified. We'll talk about that on Thursday because I want you guys to struggle with it on your own a little bit and do some research, but I'll show you some really good examples of how to figure that out. And then the last thing to talk about is sampling should be representative of your population, right? So as I mentioned this before, when we try and generalize to a population, we just want to make sure that our sample is as representative as possible while still being a random sample. And that's a really hard tightrope to walk. So that's one of the reasons why so many statistics out there are absolute crap, because it's really hard to get a good random sample that is also representative. And then there's a million other ways that you can screw up statistics. But really poor sampling is the first way, because it's like building, you can't build a house on a crappy foundation, right? And everything comes from sampling. So if you're sampling poorly, all of your analyses are going to be crap. So that's why I always tell my students that whenever you are confronted with statistics in real life, always take them with a grain of salt until you know how they were sampled and how they were analyzed. Because if they don't tell you how they got their sample and how they analyzed their data, then either they're trying to hide something from you or they're too stupid to know how to do things properly. And in either case, you shouldn't listen to their results because they're probably crap, right? But if they tell you exactly how they sampled and they tell you exactly how they analyzed it, and as long as both of those things are legit, then their results are good, right? So if you learn nothing else from this class, hopefully you can learn how to be a good consumer of statistical knowledge, because there are a lot of bad stats out there and there are a lot of good stats out there. And sometimes it's very hard to tell one from the other. But it really comes down to the sampling technique more than anything else. Okay, that's it, guys. That's all the information that we have as far as statistics is concerned. The rest of the slides just talk about what we have to do this week, and like everything else, this is all in the Google Drive, right here in PowerPoints. So you have your own copy of that as well. Any last minute questions before we go?
So I have a question, just really quick. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure the questions on the homework assignment, those are the questions. Everything right there is right there. We don't have to. Okay, I just want to make sure we weren't supposed to read a prompt and then come back in.
Nope, everything is right here in these documents. You don't have to go and get them out of the book. They're going to match up perfectly with whatever's listed here each week. So they're good to go.
Okay, so we just read the question and answer it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And discuss it, right? Discuss it in the discussion board. Because I guarantee you, especially this week, things are going to be confusing and you're going to get some of them wrong with your initial instincts, because there's a lot of vocabulary and it's a little tricky. Week 2, it's a lot easier because it's math. 2 + 2 is always 4, and there's no argument about that. 2 + 2 is 4, damn it. And so it's, we're doing stats and we're getting actual answers. So it's a lot more cut and dry starting next week. But this week, with all the vocabulary, it's a little touchy. You'll definitely have questions this week, and I will answer them all on Thursday. So let me refresh Doodle just in case it's changed. I don't think it has. And then I will make the appropriate changes in Canvas and send out an email. Yep, we're still at 17 people want Thursday at 7, 16 want Thursday at 7:30, and 15 want Wednesday at 7. So Thursday at 7 had a narrow victory. So we'll do Thursdays at 7 for that hour, right? So it'll be easy to remember too, because it'll be the same as Mondays, right? So Mondays and Thursdays at the same time, 7 to 8. Okay, any last minute questions? Thanks everybody for showing up and being a lively crowd and asking questions. I expect even more out of you on Thursday. So, come prepared to ask questions, because I got nothing to tell you on Thursday other than answering questions. So if you got no questions, we're going to just be staring at each other for an hour. All right. See you guys all on Thursday.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye,
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.